Hey everyone, today's focus question is what was slavery like in the United States? Today we're starting a new unit. Our big question in this unit is who freed the slaves? For the Do Now, I want you to take this survey to test your knowledge about slavery in the United States. Pause this video now while you respond to the survey. Then I'll go over the answers in this video. Statement number 1, slavery existed in Brooklyn. This is a fact. A lot of people think that slavery only existed in the South. That was true in the mid-1800s, right before the Civil War. But earlier in U.S. history, slavery was legal in all 13 original states. Slavery was finally outlawed in New York in 1827, and Brooklyn had the highest concentration of slavery in New York State. In 1790, almost 30% of the population were enslaved Africans. Probably the most famous person born into slavery in New York was Sojourner Truth, who escaped from slavery in 1826 and then won a lawsuit to free her son. She later became a famous activist who fought to abolish slavery nationwide. Statement 2. All slaves had dark skin. This is a myth. It's true that all slaves in United States history were considered black, but as we've discussed before, race doesn't perfectly line up with skin color. Slave owners passed laws that said slavery status would be passed on through the mother. This was during a time when everything else, names, property, land, passed down through the father's side. But they decided slavery status would pass down through the mother so that white male slave owners could rape their female slaves and keep their children in slavery. It was extremely common for slave owners to keep their own biracial children as slaves. Statement 3. Up to a third of enslaved people were Muslims. This is a fact. About a third of the people in West Africa were Muslims, so it makes sense that many of the first enslaved people brought to America were Muslims. Most of these enslaved people were forced to convert to Christianity, but of course many resisted this forced assimilation, and in the Georgia Sea Islands, enslaved people were able to pass down some Islamic traditions to their descendants. Statement 4. The effects of slavery are in the past. This is a myth. Slavery was not that long ago. The last person born into slavery died in 1971, and there are still people alive today whose grandparents were born into slavery. Listen to this doctor from the Bronx.
My grandfather was born somewhere in the 1850s, and he was born a slave. He was taken away from his mother at a very young age. When the emancipation was signed, he didn't know what that meant. He was told he could go back to his mother. He did, and she did not recognize him. He explained to her that he was her son, and they never parted. This man had a lot of tragedy. My grandmother, his wife, died when I was a baby, and they had 10 children. 5 of them had died as young adults or as children. He had 4 grandchildren, so all 4 of us grew up together in that house. We had to just admire his ability to just keep working and to do what he had to do to maintain the house. All 4 of his grandchildren did go on and get college education, get degrees. All of the great-grandchildren went on to college.
Her family's history shows how black families are still feeling the intergenerational trauma of slavery and the effects of racism and racial violence that continued even after slavery ended. Statement number 5. Some slave owners were kind to their slaves. This is a big, fat myth. In this video clip, the civil rights lawyer Jeffrey Robinson confronts a white man who believes in the myth of the kind slave owner.
They chose to stay. In most cases in the South, that's the way it worked, because they were treated as family, and they knew what they had. They didn't know what they were being faced with if they left.
So your view is that enslaved people treated as family? Then why wouldn't it be all right for me to own you as long as I treated you like family?
If that's the way economics work.
Would you be satisfied with that?
In today's world.
In any world.
In today's time.
In any time.
No.
Is it possible to be a kind murderer, rapist, or kidnapper? I don't think so. Then it's not possible to be a kind slave owner. It's inherently cruel to rob someone of their freedom and to rob them of the wealth created by their labor. In 1861, The value of all the 4 million slaves in the United States was $3.5 billion, which was more than all the other wealth in the United States combined. The majority of the nation's millionaires were all Southern slave owners. That wealth was created by the labor of enslaved people. It was stolen from them and never repaid. While it's true that some slave owners used less violence than others, the whole system of slavery was maintained by violence and the threat of violence. Slavery was inherently cruel, and there was no way to make it kind. Today, you'll examine the slave codes to get a better understanding of what slavery was like and how enslaved people resisted. Complete all of Lesson 1 in the new Google Doc. That's it for me. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.